We are. Oh. It is January 15th, 2026, and we are live, ready to kick it. I've got the Watchdog on Wall Street, Chris Markowski. I've got Tonya McKenzie, Commissioner, and I believe you've got a new title, too, in LA County. We'll talk about that in a minute. I have cable news veteran Dave Briggs, also co-host of the Sanity Podcast. Chris, I want to kick it to you to lead off because this economy is weird.
Kick it, huh? Very Tribe Called Quest of you right there, just so you know. But anyway, it's a tale of basically two economies. My business, and I know this is anecdotal, I manage money for very wealthy people, but I also manage money for people that are not, that are building up wealth. The affordability thing is real. And it's been real for a very long period of time. I don't care, what president is in charge. They can deny it all they want. You can take a look at the cost of various different items going back 5 years, and it's gone parabolic. And that's not just on Trump. That's not just on Biden. You can take this all the way back to when Clinton left office, where we had budget surpluses, where we decided to go nuts when it came to printing money. And the past 30 years, I've had my firm for a little over 30 years now, the value of a dollar has dropped by 54%. That's a real reality in the United States. That's what people are feeling. That's what most people are feeling. And until you deal with that problem, you can put everything else aside. Obviously wealthy people, they're fine. Oh yeah, they can watch Kudlow's program and say, oh, look, 4.3% GDP. That doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything to young people. I have a son that just graduated from college. He's paying $2,700 a month in rent. He's got all these. He can't get ahead at this point in time. There's no way. And he's making a pretty decent salary getting out of college, lucky to do it. That's the reality on the ground. You mentioned we're going to talk about midterms later. That's all that should matter in the midterms, quite frankly. And I don't see either side doing a bloody thing about it. More subsidies and more, expanding, checks for, the COVID stuff. That's putting a Band-Aid on a massive wound. Okay. No one is coming up with really any good ideas whatsoever to bring the costs down.
So Malcolm Kenyatta, welcome to the program. The DNC Vice Chair, also State Representative of North Philadelphia, fellow Temple University alum, Malcolm, talk to me about the current state of the economy. And I want to start just with how people are feeling on the ground because, political heads talk about this and that. How are people's pocketbooks feeling right now? Are they feeling that golden era that we were promised?
No, and this era is not even gold plated, to be honest with you, Chris. I think Brian, sorry, I'm thinking about what Chris was just saying. I'll respond to some of that in a second. But Brian, I'll tell you, things are really hard, and they've been made exponentially harder by the policies of this administration. I think Chris is right on the fact that we've had an upside down economy for a long time, and I make this point all the time. My entry into politics, very, very simple. I grew up working poor, pissed off about it, wanting to understand how it could be that my mom, who was a home health aide for most of her career, my dad, who was a social worker, worked. They worked all the time, double time, overtime, triple time. Making that sort of crunch decision that a lot of people who are in my position have to make, where you're not at home doing the homework with the kids, you're not spending family time because you're out working. And that didn't end up putting us in a position where we felt like we could get ahead. I think a part of what we're seeing in this economy and a part of what has been exacerbated by the policies of this administration is the consolidation of wealth with the wealthiest Americans, but also the consolidation within the economy more broadly. I mean, take, for example, Pennsylvania, biggest driver of our economy, agriculture. If you want to talk about processing meat, if you want to talk about the dairy industry, if you want to talk about anything within just the economy, when we're just thinking about farm payrolls. What you're seeing is that, you got one or two companies who are in charge of all of these processes along the supply chain. And what those companies do when you have two or three companies is they are able to raise prices again and again and again, irrespective of their bottom line. And we don't actually have the type of competition that you want to see in a capitalist society. And this is why so many people are saying, capitalism doesn't work. But I've often made the point that what we have right now is really a corrupted form of capitalism, where you have, three companies that own all of our media companies, three companies that own all of the meat processing, three companies that own this and that. And so until we get serious about upending that and getting the economic decision-making power out of the hands of a couple of billionaires and maybe a few millionaires who've been able to get into the club, I think we're going to find ourselves in this cycle. And I just want to make one more point on this. One of the centerpieces of Vice President Harris's campaign was about dealing with the purchases of single-family homes by these huge private equity companies. And at the
Trump's
time,
talking about that too now.
No, that's why I want to bring it up. That's why I want to bring it up, because when she was running on it in 2024, I remember a lot of my, Republican friends saying, "Oh, well, this is socialism, this is communism," whatever term they wanted to put on it. But now you have even Donald Trump talking about the need to deal with the fact that these single-family homes are being bought up. And what does that do? It puts Chris' son in a position where he's paying $2,700 a month for rent and not using that to actually buy his first home and build the type of equity that he can pass on. So we're in a really bad spot in the economy, and I think it's driven in large part by this administration's refusal and this administration's really exacerbation of the consolidation as it relates to these monopolies that we see in every segment of our economy. That's one big aspect of it.
Trump, look,
I agree with everything
in here. Let me get in here real quick.
Go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
Not a Trump fan. Not even in the slightest. He's been president for a year. You think the dynamics of the economy have changed in a year? That is a fairy tale. I mean, these dynamics have been in place back several administrations. In fact, look at the Biden economy was very similar to the one that we have now. Inflation was hurting everyday Americans. The stock market did not reflect what the real economy is. And I'm part of that real economy. I used to have one job that paid me the salary, more than the salary of 5 jobs. 5 that I have today in the media sector. So I think I am an odd reflection of the economy today. The unemployment for recent grads is at a 37-year high, and that's in part because of AI. But that it has nothing to do with Republican nor Democratic policies. Everybody's on board with, not on board with it, but responsible for the system we have. And again, not a Trump fan in the least bit. A lot of things he does typically are socialism, taking an ownership in Intel, taking 25% of high-end chips from NVIDIA.
Not Reagan.
This is nothing about this administration is fiscally conservative.
Credit card rates, 10%.
That's just nonsensical.
Let me just say, Trump gets this outsized weird credit and praise for some of his things that folks, whether you consider yourself a fan or not, that folks want to equate to his quote unquote management of the economy. But whenever there is a problem, we want to stratify the blame. So if something goes well, it's because Trump is so smart. If things are bad, then this is just all the administrations, all the politicians. What I said from the very beginning is that, listen, I'm 35 years old. And so I talked about the economy being upside down for my family through Democratic and Republican administrations. But what I've highlighted and what Trump has made worse is he has exacerbated these problems. And he was elected. This is not Malcolm's opinion. This is his opinion. His first interview after he won was, he said, "I won because of a word called groceries. It's a word that people don't use anymore, groceries. Yeah. That's why I won." And what he has done is make all of those things more expensive because of a tariff policy where he turns it up and down like I'm controlling the thermostat at home. And he does all of it to benefit his friends. Even his foreign policy is about benefiting some of his friends. Look at his possible invasion of Greenland. There's an article out today that talked about one of his billionaire friends friends, who was his friend in business school, who is asking Trump to do this, has been asking him to do it because of his own business interests. And so Donald Trump plays a populist on TV, but when it's all said and done, every single aspect of this administration has been driven by the desires and whether or not it benefits the people who supported him. That is the difference, and that's a critically important difference.
Tonya McKenzie. Tonya McKenzie.
I just want to throw in, right, because I don't know if Malcolm heard about the food, because you mentioned the food costs. Let me throw it in before we go. I'm in Italy right now. Groceries here are 25% of what we pay in the States. The food is far superior. You can't even compare. And the reality is, you mentioned about big ag. If you think that this has just happened over the past year, you're crazy. Most farm checks go to Park Avenue addresses. When Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, came out and said he was a
100%.
farmer, I almost threw up in my mouth. He owns 100%. A land that he has to lease back to farmers, for crying out loud. Yeah, there's Scott Bessent riding a tractor with a piece of grass coming up his mouth. That's BS. Okay, but this is not Democrat or Republican. You want to follow the money? Democrats get money from big ag just as much as Republicans have been getting big money from big ag. We got farmland out of Long Island, for crying out loud. It should be used for food to New York City. What do? They make crappy wine because the tax laws and the way we structure things go this way. This is both sides. This is the problem right now. You're not going to solve any problems, Malcolm, when you're pointing the fingers at Republicans, when fingers have to go in both directions. The most patriotic thing any American can do right now is quit their parties.
Tonya McKenzie, we are coming at you from an East Coast perspective. I feel like the rest of us, you've got a West Coast perspective. Obviously, a lot of this conversation is nationwide, but give us the West Coast perspective. How's the economy? What's going on? What do people care about right now?
Well, listen, everyone knows California is uber expensive. It's out of control, and it's been like that for a long time. So inflation does not help. But I do want to lean into the positives that you were talking about. And as upset as the women that look like me were, because over 300,000 of them lost jobs due to the actions that Trump and his administration took. The most important piece of this is that the Small Business Association has reported that there's been a 19% increase in newly registered Black-owned businesses. So I try to, again, not point fingers, but see where we're getting traction at. And the fact that a lot of these women that lost their jobs are now starting businesses, I think is a really big deal, because we all know that small business is the heart of the American economy. Mm-hmm. So with that, and a lot of the cuts that were taking place in mental health, a lot of these private mental health organizations are starting to grow. Right. So you have organizations like the Loveland Foundation or Therapy for Black Girls, and mental health, online mental health organizations. Those are also starting to grow. So I think for the most part, people are piecemealing jobs around. As he said earlier, he had one job. Now he might have 5. But the cool thing is a lot of you're finding opportunity in spaces that maybe you weren't looking for them before. There's a way to kind of piecemeal it together and make it make sense while everything else kind of unfolds. So I'm an entrepreneur myself. I have my own business. So it's good to see people taking a chance on themselves and not relying so heavily on our government in those jobs. Unfortunately, it has caused a lot of problems for a lot of people, but finding the upside of it, which I'm glad, Brian, you started off with that, allows for us to look at how people are adjusting, which I think in his twisted mind, that's kind of what he was trying to do, but it didn't have to be this painful, or did it? I guess that's my question. Did it have to be this painful and inhumane?
Yeah, and let's talk about Trump policy specifically, because he came in pretty hot and heavy and radical. We were on a path for the Fed chairman to systematically lower rates. I mean, we were all banking on that. It didn't happen because he tariffed everybody when he got in office. Our friends, our enemies, everybody. Non-discriminate. Everybody who does business with the U.S., he was charging a premium for that, which was taxed on American importers. which they don't like to talk about. Malcolm, I know you've got a few opinions on the tariff policy and just the impact. I see that as a big catalyst for some of the weirdness of the current economy. But Malcolm, what do you have to say?
So that's absolutely right, and I think with Chris and Dave, there's a lot of agreement here, but where the disagreement falls in is that Donald Trump needs to be held accountable for his policy decisions. He has made policy decisions that have impacted the economy. He is not like just not a part of this. He's a huge part of it. And what's worse, it's not that Donald Trump just has bad ideas on the economy. You've had good ideas and bad ideas come out of both parties since the foundation of the country. The issue is that you can draw a direct line back to him, back to his own financial standings. You have a regime that operates as a cartel. Every decision that is made is about his bottom line. I mentioned tariffs, and you saw somebody in the administration had advanced notice in one iteration of him saber rattling toward China. I hope people remember the story that I'm telling, where somebody opened a Bitcoin account and basically made $400,000 or so because they had advanced knowledge of Donald Trump's tariff policies in China. If you look at some of the tariff decisions that he's made, there's been great reporting done on this by the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, everybody else, that many of these decisions are being made not with the American people front of mind, but being made with him front of mind, with his family front of mind. And so it's one thing when you have an administration that you think is waking up every day, trying their best, making political decisions that you disagree with. It's another thing to have an administration that operates with a level of ongoing and blatant corruption that is directly tied to the solvency of everybody else's bank account in our lives and our ability to actually have the type of life that Americans deserve, where you can have that one good job, afford that first home, retire with some dignity, maybe go to Italy on vacation, yourself. And all of that is out of reach. And so this is not about Democrat or Republican necessarily. It is about corruption, and it is about the Republican Party in particular being able to call out the corruption of this administration. The conflicts of interest are staggering. They're staggering. And they have infected every single decision that is made by this administration. Every single decision is made with his pocketbook front and center, not the pocketbook of the American people. And that is wherein lies the problem.
Let me
Malcolm, I agree with you. The only problem is until you can recognize that it's both sides, that's where the problem is.
We just met, so you've never heard me say this about the Democratic Party as well.
We can go both parties. Okay, that's just part of the problem. I call it, this is what's wrong with the country, is that they're both it's a uniparty. They both help each other out. Nobody ever goes to jail for anything. Nobody gets prosecuted. Everything goes by the wayside, whether it be the Epstein files or whatever it may be. It's a Potomac two-step, and that's what we deal with. And again, they want we, the people, basically fighting and saying, I'm on this team or on that team. I'm not on any team. I wouldn't join a team, especially none of these teams, for crying out loud, the way that they've done things. We can go through one after another. Every single politician, take a look at the net worth of everybody in Congress. Maybe two I like, Rand Paul and Thomas Massey. There's about the only two guys, people there that actually, they say what they believe and they stand up for it and they go with it. Few and far between that do that. But every point that you made might be accurate. But the funny thing is somebody can say, oh yeah, but what about this one? What about this one? Take a look at how much money they make when they're in Congress. How is that possible? Yeah, what was it? Left the White House. It wouldn't even take a pencil, for crying out loud. I mean, this is what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be a public servant. You're not supposed to get rich there, and they all get rich there. They're basically influencers, for crying out loud. It's sad.
Let me add some color to that because, again, not a Trump fan and little known, his wealth was really flat, if not down, over the last decade. It doubled last year. That is a staggering amount of corruption, and you are spot on. And Donald Trump Jr.'s wealth, 6x'd. in 1 year. Blatant, despicable corruption. But let me
His son-in-law.
let me make Chris's point, because I think Chris and I are going to be the top and bottom of a ticket in our own party. Nancy Pelosi's return since 1987, up 17,000%. That is 8 times better than the S&P 500 that has been a rocket ship over that period. Corruption, to Chris's point, is bipartisan. But as far as the tariffs go, I don't know that those are necessarily to line his pockets. They're the one thing he actually believes in the world. And it might be the only thing. I don't think he has a single principle in the world except for believing in tariffs. And all you need to know about the tariffs is the carve-outs and the exceptions that he's made, because they've seen inflation skyrocket there. So that's an acknowledgement that they are a tax on the American people. And to your point, another failure.
Yep, I agree. 110% failure, especially for small business. Big business is a little bit different. Nike can afford to basically eat costs to some degree. A small shoe manufacturer, like I said, a small business, say in Southern California, there in Tonya's area, they can't do that. They get crushed by tariffs. Big companies do it, but that's how it always works, and that's how both Democrats and Republicans enrich themselves. It's called regulatory capture. They write rules and regulations that basically, hey, they'll complain about it a little bit, but they can afford it. Same thing happened after the financial crisis, where it's, oh, okay, we've got this stupid Dodd-Frank bill. Oh, yeah, we're cleaning up Wall Street. You know what you did? You put out of business all the mid-level to small-level banks because they could no longer afford to stay in business because of the regulations. And the guys that were the part of the problem, all the big firms, they can pay. They stayed in business. Again, both sides.
And to your point, though, I do want to say even the larger companies, the Nikes and the Adidas, yeah, they can survive the hit, but the hit is also causing them to have to repivot and focus on a different portion of their business. They're not able to do the things they were doing before. So yeah, they can survive, and they will. At the same time, they've had to pivot and drop some of their more high-end lines because they're losing money. They can't afford to do some of the things that they've been trying to do, knowing good and well that these tariffs are it's keeping it from being accessible to their core audience, which is middle class America.
So Tonya,
Trump's idea of actually bringing sneaker manufacturing back to the United States will never ever happen.
They've said it. They were like, never, not today, not ever. So you're just gonna have to pay these prices, or you can be like some of my friends that actually just go overseas, because at this point it's cheaper to go overseas and get it and then come back home.
And Tonya, I want to go right back to you. We have seen miserable jobs numbers over the past, 6-8 months. Some of them have gotten revised down even worse. He fired the person who collected that data because he didn't like the data, and the new person's still reporting bad numbers. If I'm not laughing, I'd be crying about this. It's a horrible, weird situation, and he's got his fingerprints all over it. Well, the job situation. By the way, Dave, let me go to Tonya and then right back to you. Most of the hiring is in healthcare right now. Yeah. If it weren't for healthcare, old people are literally like anchoring this economy right now, and all of the hiring in this economy under the Trump administration. That's not the manufacturing boom he promised us. It's not anything. It's literally old people like the president himself. Tonya, go ahead.
Listen, I'm a commissioner for alcohol and other drugs. We work with agencies that provide services for deterrence, for addiction, for mental health, right? The move that he made over the last few days, canceling those grants and didn't know what he was doing, caused people to start laying off and firing people. And then that just got reversed a couple of hours ago. The incompetence is really the problem. The incompetence with lack of transparency and communication is causing more problems than just about anything else, because you can't even plan. I can't plan to have these employees because I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay them. I can't plan to grow. I can't plan to service people because I don't even know if I'll have the workers to be able to pay them, just to turn around for you to be like, my bad. You know what? I'm sorry. That's not what we meant. That's not what we meant. So now we have to go rehire, and this. And like you were saying, he fired the person that was doing the reports. So then you look at something that will say, okay, there's been a decline in inflation. Yay. But how true is that? Because you're not even giving us all the information. So what can we depend on? What can we plan? What can we use to plan? How do we go about being fiscally responsible on our own and in our own efforts when we can't even get good information from your agencies? This is a nightmare.
Dave?
Well, I was going to say these numbers, in fact, prove Malcolm's point. So I hate to do it for him, but the U.S. added an average of 49,000 jobs a month last year. 168,000 averaged in Biden's final year. I don't know why Democrats don't talk about this more. You're talking more than 3x the job creation in Biden's final year, when Donald Trump said this country was dead. And those are also the smallest job creation outside of a recession since 2003. That ain't just bleak. That is terrifying for what's ahead for this economy. And when you saddle that with AI on top of it, where we're seeing companies replace thousands of jobs with a couple AI agents, it's about to get a lot worse. And I don't see, to Chris's point, either party stepping forward with a clear solution.
Why do you think that is, if you don't mind me asking? Why do you think there's a lack of failure of innovative solutions for what is going on? It's not like these people are stupid. They have degrees. They've studied this. They understand.
That might be part of the problem.
What is the problem?
The degrees might be part of what type of degrees they're getting.
I feel like I'm waiting for some young kid on TikTok to come up with a solution faster than the people that we're paying to come up with the solution.
Tonya, what you said was very, very astute. Like I said, I have clients all over the country, and many of them are small business owners. And small business owners are dealing with regulations. How does government, how do they control us in power? So you have the tax code and you have the regulatory code. When you're constantly changing rules and regulations, when you're constantly changing the tax code, it makes it very, very difficult for small business owners. And if you look inside the internals of the jobs numbers, the businesses that are really getting hit are mid to small size businesses. They're getting smacked upside the head. Tariffs, regulations, a myriad of things. You get the government out of the way and allow people to go out there and build and create. That's how the country is supposed to work. Anybody comes in, you pound on regulate, do all sorts of things. You say to yourself, well, you know what? Gee whiz, this is not worth it. The numbers don't add up. I actually discussed this with a bunch of young people. I said, I started my company over 30 years ago, and there's certain costs that are involved working with the SEC, whatever it may be. If I tried today to start my company with the same capital, adjusted for inflation, no way, no how. All sorts of crap I got to deal with, the amount of money I got to send to the SEC. I mean, it's nonsensical. You're constantly getting hit with a fee, or a tax, a licensing fee. It's over the top, and that's what's killing businesses. You know, the fact that, certain states you're going to have to take hundreds of hours of a course to be an interior decorator. Come on. I mean, it's just silly. Why hold people back?
Well, listen, we don't, you don't have disagreement. And I guess I keep pounding on this, both sides are the same, because frankly, that's the horse that Donald Trump rode into the White House. This idea that everything's the same, everybody's the same, it's all the same. Listen, do not get me wrong. Brian knows this. But when I ran for vice chair of the DNC a couple of months ago, I didn't run because I thought everything was going great. I didn't do it because I thought the party's just working as it should. The corporate capture in Congress and in our state houses, you're absolutely right, has been on both sides. But what ends up happening is there is an egregious nature to what is happening right now that I think it requires Americans to speak with a unified voice about what is happening in this administration, about the policies that are coming out of this administration. And a lot of the things that I think you would get universal agreement among the five of us that we should do, I look back over the course of my life, and you can argue Democrats didn't fight hard enough for it, but you can actually draw a direct line to Republicans blocking it. You talk about the issue of private equity buying up single family homes. I go back to that because housing ranks consistently as the number one issue for folks in my generation, millennials, older Gen Z folks, and soon it'll be the top issue for Generation Alpha as well. That was a bill that was introduced by Democratic members of the House and the Senate. Republicans blocked that bill. So it was not like both sides blocked that bill. Republicans blocked that bill just last year. You talk about raising the minimum wage, which is one of the most popular policies that we have right now, because when you raise the minimum wage, you put people in a position where fewer and fewer people, need access to government support for healthcare, need access to food stamps, need access to all these different things. I grew up in a working poor family, and this mythology that people want to be on the government teat is bullshit. Nobody enjoyed standing in line at the grocery store when they used to have the books of the food stamps. Okay, now we have the card. There used to be a book. Okay, and there was no joy in standing in the damn grocery store with a book, going through, checking how much you had. And so people want to work. And I think what we agree on and what we need universally is to do a couple of things. And I'll use Chris's frame of the tax code and the regulatory code. On the tax code, I think there's universal agreement that the wealthiest Americans do not pay their fair share. They end up paying nothing in actual taxes when you have the lawyers finish going through their tax returns. And middle class families end up paying the most.
But what's fair share? Okay,
fair share. Let's start by saying fair share is not zero, which is what the actual tax rate was for many. Let me finish my point.
But I'm going to say, I'm going to do it rather than fair share, because like I said, I've been working. I come from my dad was a school teacher. I worked my way up. I busted my ass my entire life. Waited tables, bartended. I run a family business right here. I'm up every day 3:00 in the morning, and I'm still working now. Okay, and that's not going to change. And I got a lot of people that work for me and responsible for me. Okay. Yep. How many months out of the year do I get to keep? How many months? I'm doing it rather than time, rather than percentages. How many months out of the year? How much money? If I work 12 months, okay, do I get to keep, I don't know, from June on? So I got to work for
Chris. I think the red herring here. No, but here's the point, and here's the red herring, and this is why I go back to this both sides ism that has really crushing our country. The people who are avoiding taxes, with all due respect to you, you're not a member of the clubs of the people that I'm talking about. You were not invited to Jeff Bezos's wedding unless you were there, and I'm not aware. It's these multinational corporations, people who are making billions of dollars, who get to avoid taxes. You're absolutely right. There are a lot of people.
I'll show you. Hear me on this. No, but I hear you.
But no, because I'm not finished. So you can't hear me because I haven't finished. Here's the point. Here's the point. Here's the point, Chris.
Tax it.
Here's the point, Chris. I get, and I support actually cutting taxes for middle class families. Actually cutting taxes for middle class families. And I'm not just saying this. I have a voting record. I voted to cut taxes in Pennsylvania in the past 2 years 7 times. Okay, so I am for cutting taxes. What I'm talking about is what you are talking about and what Dave is talking about, what we're all talking about, are the wealthiest Americans. If you tax just the top 1%, at the average, 28 to 32% tax rate that the average middle class family is dealing with, we would be in a position where we could fund so many of the things that we know we need to fund in terms of infrastructure improvement, in terms of investment. And so we're not doing that. And part of the reason we're not doing it because the biggest here's the issue. The reason
Jeff
we're not doing
it. Say
it again.
Jeff Bezos doesn't get a salary. he has stock and he borrows against it. It's a simple fix, and both parties won't fix it. If he's going to borrow against his stock and that's going to be his pay, tax it. But
no, I'm with you. I agree with you.
I know.
I agree. So we're on the same page. The disagreement and what I'm talking about is that when you talk about raising taxes on the wealthiest Americans, you get people who are nowhere in that tax bracket who get their hair on the back of their back standing up, as if I'm talking about you, Dave.
Hey,
I mean, Chris,
no.
under my tax policy, your taxes wouldn't go up. The taxes would go up for the wealthiest people in the country, and that's the problem right now.
The tax code,
yeah, it's insane.
80,000
and I agree with you. And those loopholes are how, as I said, by the time lawyers are done with the tax code. So we agree.
We are going to pivot the conversation, but piggyback on this. We're going to go to Tonya. We're going to go to Tonya.
Malcolm.
I wanted to, Tonya, I'm going right to you, and it's piggybacking on this.
Okay.
We have midterm elections coming up. We just saw a blue tsunami in the off-year election. Malcolm, you and I are going to talk about that in a minute. Tonya, talk about that, this, whatever. I lost control of this whole thing.
Listen, real quick. Malcolm, I want to comment on something he said, early part of what he said. Just messaging. You said, if we could all get on the same message. So, congratulations on your election to your seat. Messaging is important, and y'all don't know how to do it. And I love Democrats, but we cannot get on the same message and convey a message strongly or united for nothing in the world. Now, let's talk about midterms. One of the points that I think that the Democratic Party is totally missing is all of this anti-DEI stuff, which has caused so many problems, is sickening. One of the messages that people don't talk about is that all of this stuff is hurting white men. Okay? Let me be very clear about how bad this is. White men are not, they're the least enrolled in college right now. Okay? And I feel like you had something to say about college, Chris. I'm not sure, but you sounded like maybe education and degrees aren't that important to you. So I want to
depends on the degree.
I do want to get into that because I feel like we're in this anti-intellectual movement that's we're not. Nauseating. But I want to talk about that. But here's the thing: all of this was about economics, right? And you brought up messaging. We need to get all on the same message. Democrats don't be on the same message. If they don't get their shit together on message, they're not going to win. They ain't going to win nothing moving forward. Get your messaging together. But I want y'all to understand this. All of this anti-DEI stuff, okay, has put white men in a very bad position. And for me, that I don't like that. I have friends that are white men that are struggling, especially middle class. And let me tell you why. Blue collar jobs are disappearing. Not anybody talking about that. The white men without degrees or being left behind in a very heavy industry, in this automation heavy industry, are being left behind. The Trump administration is not talking about that. Without trade education or college, this group risks becoming the most underrepresented in this new economy. This is a new economy, and we are not having the right conversations about what this new economy is looking like. Even as political rhetoric tells them they're being DEI is getting rid of DEI is helping them, it's actually hurting them. And nobody is having this honest conversation about what this new economy looks like. And these numbers are going down in college. It's not helpful. The Democratic Party is not on message. So when we're talking about midterms, the fear is that we are going to continue on this trajectory because y'all don't get the message together. The irony of all this anti-DEI movement is that it claims to be defending white men, but it's abandoning them, especially the ones who aren't rich, urban, or connected. The ones with money are doing well. The ones without are not. We're watching an entire demographic getting pushed out of college, not because they're incapable, but because the system no longer sees them as worth saving. Like they can save themselves as long as they get rid of DEI and get rid of us. This is not working out well, but the Democratic Party is also not messaging it right.
Well,
and for people that are getting hurt by it, you're not even identifying it. And I don't understand why.
Tonya, in fairness, this off-year election, the Democrats, I mean, any competitive seat, they won them all. Yeah. New York City, New Jersey. I was leading, PR for a Democrat who ran as a Republican for Philadelphia District Attorney. We got smoked by 50 points, and he was a great candidate. But that was the mood. If you had an R next to your name, you were probably going to lose. So, I agree the Democratic Party has faults, but they've got a lot of momentum right now.
They do, but this is the problem.
I know you've got more to say about that.
The problem is they get comfortable and they get confident and a little cocky. And when it's time, that messaging starts coming out of the right and it hits hard. And I don't really trust our government right now. So what kind of mechanism they might come up with, that is anxiety inducing, because no, we don't want to continue on this path where there's no balance, where there's no checks and balances, where there's no opportunity to right some of the wrongs, to, get this train right back on the track. So at least there's a little humanity in whatever this new economy and this new way of living looks like. There's nothing right now. There's no guardrails, but getting too comfortable and too cocky is going to cause problems. That is the part that has traditionally shown up. Even if midterms, we should be winning, getting too cocky, not getting your messaging together, and not identifying real problems and opportunity to win because you're afraid to say, hey, white man, we understand what you were saying, but hey, this is also impacting you. And if we keep going down this road, it's going to hurt you. We're all hurting, but this is really going to hurt you. I don't understand why, if you look at the numbers, that is a conversation that needs to be had, because anything extreme hurts us. This extreme anti-woke, anti-DEI, call it what you want, it's causing problems now for the other side that they thought they were protecting.
Well, I think that I don't think that let me say it this way. And I think a lot of this conversation is sort of emblematic of how I sort of look at politics generally. I think most issues are less left versus right and almost always top versus bottom. And a part of the challenge that the Democratic Party has is our challenge is we have to be the party for everybody else, right? If you refuse to be a part of the personality cult that has become the Republican Party, I mean, according to the president, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a rhino. Okay, so she's not a Republican in good standing anymore because she believes that we shouldn't be protecting pedophiles. And that is something that, frankly, if you ask the American people, I think Democrats, Republicans, Independents want every single person that was a part of abusing children to go to prison. And I don't care what party they're in. I sort of draw the line at you abusing kids on some billionaire's island. Apparently, that's not a line in the sand for this administration. And our challenge in all of these conversations is that even when we agree, and I think it was just sort of shown here, me and Chris are agreeing, but there's so much lack of trust that is fostered by the people at the top who do a really good job of making us enemies when people are actually agreeing on the issues that are impacting their lives. And a part of what we saw in this last election was a lot of people doing what Chris and Dave have said, putting their party to the side and recognizing that we need to vote for candidates many of whom are raising their hands for the first time and saying, I don't like the trajectory of this country and I want to change it. I don't like the consolidation of wealth at the top. I don't like the corrupt corporate influence. I don't like that people can go to Congress and trade stocks in real time as they're getting information that the average investor doesn't have. These are bipartisan bills that we need to see advanced. And frankly, I think you're going to have a lot of Democrats who are talking about it. Now, Tonya, to your point of folks being cocky, I don't know who they are, but I can tell you the new DNC, none of us are sort of counting any chickens before they hatch. In fact, I woke up this morning to my chief of staff sending me an article of Donald Trump and Reuters this morning saying that he doesn't believe we should have midterm elections.
Yes.
And when you put that in line with an interview he did last week, where he said his greatest regret of his first administration was not seizing the ballot boxes in 2020, we should all be very terrified about where this is going. And I think that this next election really is going to be about putting country above party. And the reality is, to stop what Donald Trump is doing, we have to have a Democratic controlled Congress. We are not in a position where we're going to have a third party controlling Congress, either the Republicans, who have shown no backbone against this administration, or the Democrats are going to be in control of Congress. And if Democrats are lucky enough that people put their faith in them, a lot has to change. We cannot be about defending a system that wasn't serving people, for a long time. And I'll just reiterate what I said from the very beginning. I got involved in politics because the economy was not working for my family. And I come from a very Democratic family, a very blue city, the whole bit. So people know stuff isn't working. And what happened in 2024, more than anything else, was that a lot of people decided to sit it out completely. A lot of people believe, just like is being said on this, that there's nobody that's in it for you. And I think a part of the challenge is when you have candidates who raise their hands, who have messages that I think speak to the concerns, the fears, and the aspirations of people, those aren't the people who get, on the big platforms, media platforms, for people to hear from them. Because the reality is, the way that people hear about what's happening in politics is on TV and is on the news. That's how people hear about it. And like traditional cable TV, even though, new media is having, I don't want to say a resurgence, but is really exploding, a majority of people still get their news from TV. There's an article I read about this just yesterday. A majority of people still get their news from TV. We're in a position right now where literally 3 companies control every single thing you watch on TV. 2 or 3 companies control all of the AI platforms that people are going to get answers to questions. 2 or 3 companies own every social media platform. And so Democrats are in a really tough position where the folks who control the mechanics by which we communicate as Americans are owned by the very people who do not want anything to change. And they have been really good at getting us to hate each other by using race, by using religion, by using trans kids, by using city versus or from rural, urban versus suburban. They've used it over and over and over again. And so what we have to recognize in this moment is that the wealthiest, the elite, the folks who have, open-ended passes to the administration right now, those are the folks that are screwing us over. And in this next election, I hope that we come together as a country to put a check on this administration. And I think that is going to happen.
Dave, I want to go right to you. Malcolm talked about the media climate.
Malcolm talked about everything. I lost track, man.
but I mean, the media climate is clearly how
listen, dude.
People are, funneling their views. Talk to me. You're a veteran.
Let me just, before I get to the news, like, one of the problems with our politics is that the left is shouting just as much as the right, and no one's reading. The fact of the matter is, the biggest party in the country, we found this out 3 days ago, ain't even close. 45% of Americans are independent. And neither party speaks to them. And I know you think you do.
Dave, a few months ago, you mocked my Forward Party.
Well, no one.
You rolled your eyes when I brought up Forward Party.
Yeah, Dave wasn't listening because I just said that, Dave. So we agree. But go ahead.
No one's done it right. No one speaks to the middle. I know you think you do, but that's not what I hear. That's not what the center here is. And what will happen in the midterms, the Republicans will lose the House. It's already baked in. I mean, if you look at the prediction markets,
are they going to lose the Senate too?
3/4 say they're going to lose the House, 75%. 2/3 of bettors, traders, if you will, say the Republicans hold the Senate. It's already baked in. We know what's going to happen. It's basically the math. If you look at the map, it's already baked in. And will anything change? No, we'll just start investigating Donald Trump and impeaching him 2 or 3 times, which I can't disagree with. But will anything change? No, the pendulum will just swing.
Yeah, that's the thing. You bring up, we talked about a lot of different problems here, and you mentioned money in politics. I don't have anything against wealthy people that have done. I don't have anything against. You mentioned Jeff Bezos. I don't have anything against him. He created an amazing business, did it on his own, out of his own garage, and look at all the jobs it created. Look at all the things that he's done. You want to get money out of politics and all this stuff. I'm all for that, but neither side wants that. Okay, they don't. Every single time they talk around it. Real easy. You can do some things like we don't allow foreigners to donate to candidates. Why do we allow people or companies that are not in a district influence their own election by sending money there? Why not make that illegal? The only people that could donate to any candidate are ones that you could actually vote for. Keep all that outside influence out of various different districts. So we make it more localized, which is what we want. It's what the founders wanted. We basically, in this country, we basically said, hey, you know what? We're going to just outsource everything to Washington, D.C. when we were supposed to have a system in place where it was supposed to be done in your local community, supposed to be done within the states. For crying out loud, these senators used to be elected by the state legislature, which quite frankly was better because it was a more federalist system. And what happens is all these states, they will just send it to Washington, D.C. And D.C. gets bigger. It's like Don Fanucci and Godfather 2. He's going around. Everybody's wetting their beak. The wealthiest city in the country, as far as income is concerned, is Washington, D.C. What do they build and create in Washington, D.C.? Nothing. And that's where it all is. It's where all the money, trillions of dollars go there, and it's taken. Everybody gets their grubby little hands on it as it gets filtered out. I want to keep the money home in my town, in my city, in my district. I don't want to be sending it to D.C. where it's going to be stolen. I mean, they just even estimated now was about 10% of the federal budget is fraud. I talked about this. People say, hey, we got to raise taxes. I'm like, fine, raise my taxes. But you know what? Do this first. Have a balanced budget amendment. Balance the budget, get rid of the race and fraud. And all of my additional taxes that I got to pay, that has to go towards paying down the debt. I want my kids, what we've done to our children in this country, $38 trillion in debt. I mean, we can't tax all the wealth. You couldn't take all the money that they have and even make a dent in this. And it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And like I said, I started off the program. We just print more. The reason why we have inflation is a monetary issue. That's because we spend more than we take in. Over the past 30 years, a dollar has decreased in value by 54%. And if we keep printing, it's just going to keep continuing. That's why things are so expensive.
And I think if you look at the jobs number, if you look at the deficit numbers, do those get better or worse under Democratic and Republican administrations? The answer is very clear. Deficits go down under Democratic administrations. Republicans pretend to care about debt and deficits, and then they go in and explode the debt and deficits, and that is the reality. And so again, there's not a lot of disagreement in terms of what we should do from a policy perspective. But what ends up frustrating me a little bit is that, people say they're sort of nonpartisan, both sides are corrupt. And then you tell me that the two politicians you respect are two Republicans who have voted for the same debt and deficit policies. Tom Massey,
they haven't. Thomas Massey and Rand Paul are for cutting everything. They're every single day. They're trying to cut everything.
Thomas Massey just yesterday said that he votes with Republicans 92% of the time. 91% of the time.
It's more social issues on fiscal. No, he tries to cut all the time.
What social issue is Thomas Massey on the left of?
Thomas Massey votes for every single cut out there. So does Rand Paul. They're super fiscal because Trump hates them. They're like the old Dr. No, Tom Coburn, another great one.
Well, he hates anybody who is not. I mean, now listen, I give them credit, and I gave them credit as it relates to the Epstein files and some other things where they've, this intervention, these new foreign wars.
Cutting off all foreign aid that they tried to do this past week that got rejected by both sides? Wanted to cut off $3.3 billion for Israel, another $1.5 billion for nope, both sides. Nope, keep sending money. Keep sending money. Keep going. We see all this waste and fraud. They try to cut it. Nope, both sides sign off on it.
Both sides, but then you like two Republicans. I just want to highlight that.
All right, so we
libertarians.
We are coming right up at an hour. We are coming right up at an hour. I want to go around the table. 60 seconds. Chris, we'll start with you. Dave, we'll go around the table. Chris, final thoughts.
No, listen. Like I said, it's got to be. On my show every single day. I do my podcast. I do my radio show. I talk about. And I give solutions to solving problems. Okay, and those are the people I like. No, nobody is. They're zero solutions. Democrats want to win, or Republicans want to win. Let me make a suggestion. Why don't you go back to 1992, maybe 1996, and dust off Bill Clinton's policies? Do that, and you'll win. You'll get half the Republicans. You'll get half. Bill Clinton, more conservative than bloody George Bush, more conservative than Donald Trump, for crying out loud. I'll take him in a heartbeat, but Democrats don't want him either. And the policies that he had back then, which were enormously successful.
I like Bill Clinton. But
you like him, but you go look at his policies and see if you agree with them.
Dave.
Very conservative.
Final thought.
Look, I feel like I'm one of the few true centrists left in the country, and I can give you people that I like on both sides of the aisle. In fact, if there's one person on both sides that I would like to see be president in 2028, his name is Josh Shapiro, without a close second, and he is a Democrat. And I, for most of my adult life, was a Republican. I do believe Josh Shapiro is one of the few people in the country that says he can speak to the middle and actually means it, actually wants to talk to the middle, and actually wants to pass policies that's good for everybody. So I would love to see some moderation in 2028. We're not going to see it in the midterms. The Democrats are going to win on the word of affordability, and that's fine, but they don't have proof that their policies accomplish that when you look at the last year of the Biden administration. So look, I would just love to see some moderation. If it's Shapiro, fine. If it's, look, I know you don't think Nikki Haley is a moderate, but she is a true moderate when you compare to where the party is today. Someone in that close to the middle, I think, has a chance of rebuilding this country, and a chance of accomplishing things, and a chance of actually pulling both parties together and having some compromise. Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah. Now, I don't think he has a chance to win in this grotesque Trump environment, but that guy will sit down with any Democrat on the planet and do business with them. I know this is a pipe dream. I miss compromise. I wish we could get back to it, but I'm not hopeful.
Yep.
I like Ro Khanna too, by the way.
I love.
I don't agree with a lot of his stuff,
I like
but I think he's a good dude. I think he's a righteous dude. I like him. Don't agree with a lot of stuff, but he's a righteous dude.
And Malcolm, I'm not going to ask you to make an endorsement. I know it's way premature for that. I'm on the Shapiro train, though. I'm
not making an endorsement because I cannot. But I want to say again, like, we're having this conversation, but I actually have a record. When House Democrats control the House, 94% of the bills that we have passed been bipartisan. 94%. So if you say you like Josh Shapiro and you like the bills he signed, Malcolm Kenyatta has voted for every single one of them. That's how those bills get to his desk, because I vote for him. Good. I just think that we have to be in a position where the guy who's in charge, that Americans recognize the ways in which the fundamental systems that allow us to disagree are being ripped away. And I appreciate that we do have a governor who has sued Donald Trump 70 plus times and who has won again and again and again. And I do think that when we sort of get out of the corporate media bubble, you have a lot of people who agree with me, and Chris, you might agree with me on this as well. I think the government should be making your life better or leaving you the fuck alone. That's my sort of tagline for government. So maybe
libertarian, Malcolm.
Okay,
Libertarian.
there you go. Like there you go.
Tonya McKenzie, you get the last word.
Awesome. First of all, thank you for having me here. I just love Chris. He is so animated and funny and smart. I just love smart people. So I love the opportunity to be in here. We are fiscally conservative, socially liberal. So I don't know if that's considered the middle for you, Dave, like where that is, but that's where we're at. We're in the middle. Like, how do we do the money thing? How do we do the social thing and make it make sense? Yeah. But I do have to say, in this moment, this is a heavy moment for us in this country. I feel like everything we learned in civics is just no longer. So I feel duped personally, but whatever. The political noise is loud, but underneath all that noise, I think there's a quiet revolution, especially for Black women. And that's who I'm speaking for today, because we're not just bouncing back. We are redefining what work looks like through ownership, influence, and leadership. We have to. And I think more groups need to start thinking like that. Ownership, influence, and leadership. Whether it's a surge in entrepreneurship, the rise in civic participation, or just this massive cultural shift that we know needs to happen in order for us to survive. I think reinvention is going to be something we all have to look at as we move past this moment, because what we had is no longer. What we need and how we move forward is going to be pivotal for all of us. And messaging, again, Malcolm, to the Democratic Party. I love the Democratic Party. I love them, but I need the messaging to be tight. That's the PR person in me. I just need some good messaging. I need everybody on one accord. I need folks to get right and make sure it's tight and ready for midterms. And that's my word for today.
Tonya McKenzie, Dave Briggs, Chris Markowski, Malcolm Kenyatta, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. I know the four of us are going to continue this conversation for a little bit offline. But again, thank you. Catch us next month. Appreciate it.